see if I get this right. Did you ever took pictures, Zerka?
Yeah, what?
Pictures. Did you use cameras or not? You never use cameras to take pictures.
Yes, we made pictures, of course.
Yeah, you did.
Motion pictures, certainly we did. Started in the 40s.
It was, I'm assuming that it was simpler at that time.
There is a right, it was very unusual. And we had the first sound camera that was available at the time.
Well, now I think it's working. Let me see if it worked. Let me make a test here, just to check if it's working. No, Zerka, what I would like to ask you actually is the following. I was looking at the Psychodrama third volume.
I need to do something with this water. There's a little stool in the...
Yeah, so let me take that.
Through with this?
No, he's bringing the stool for me to put the water.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a little bit...
It's better.
Yeah?
Fine.
It will...
Yeah. Notice the color red. I covered that myself.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, what I was trying to tell you, I was looking at the third volume of Psychodrama, and then I found I was not able to read before. Then I found a small publication called Psychodramatic Rules, Techniques and Adjunctive Methods.
Right.
That I thought that it's a quite simple way of introducing psychodrama for people who don't know, and because our people are not necessarily familiar with that, so I thought about going through a little bit the rules and the techniques and ask you a little bit about that, and if we can show something, we can do that. So this is, then when I took this, how do I call this? It's not a book, it's a booklet.
We call it a monograph.
A monograph. Then I realized that in the third volume of Psychodrama, it's there, but in any case. One of the things that I can see regarding the rules, for instance, is that the first rule says the subject acts out his conflicts instead of talking about them.
Correct.
Well, this doesn't necessarily mean that we should be talking about or showing conflicts. It can be something else. It can be
anything that the subject is concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
It could be relations to people, relations to the universe, relations to God, relations to work, relations to his family members. It can be anything. Don't forget that we started out as a form of therapy. So obviously the people were people who presented their problems.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever concerns you, whatever is important to you that you need to work on, and it is strictly, for most people, voluntary.
Yeah.
They have to come and admit, I'm having a problem with my husband, I can't stand my old son, whatever. So it's up to the director to elicit from the protagonist the area of concern. And instead of telling, they reenact it.
So one of the difference when we compare with psychoanalysis, where the person just talks. So the psychodrama is about acting out, not only
Psychodrama
talk.
is drama
Is
of the
drama.
mind and the body
Action.
in action.
Second rule, the subject acts in the here and now.
Yes, that's interesting. We don't let them talk about the past because then it becomes a story.
Mhm.
Instead of saying, for example, I was 6 years old, I say, no, you are now 6 years old. So the past, present, and the future are always represented in the present tense.
Mhm.
It's very
Yeah.
different to be 6 years old or to talk about being 6 years old.
Yeah. So now I am 66 years
Yes, and
old.
you make
so,
yourself short.
and
Right.
I'm playing
Marbles.
marbles.
Right.
I'm playing.
You're
marbles.
enjoying yourself.
Absolutely.
You don't want to go in for dinner.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
So this is the second one. The third rule, the subject must act out his truth or her truth with all his subjectivity.
Correct. Like you. You're sitting down on your knees. Your body's different when you're sitting down as a little boy playing.
Absolutely.
And you're playing with the marbles.
Mhm.
The only thing that's missing here is your friend with whom you were playing marbles.
Absolutely, but he is there. He is there.
And if we want to bring him
the
here,
camera cannot
cannot see him.
see him, but
You
we
see
can.
him.
I can see him, Zazinho.
And if
Yeah.
you would need it to see him, we would have an auxiliary ego that's a therapeutic actor taking his role, taking his part, and play marbles with you.
Yeah, good. Fourth rule: the patient, or
In
the
those times we
subject,
talked about patient, now we talk about subject.
the subject is encouraged to maximize all expression, action, and verbal communication rather than to reduce it.
Yeah. So here you are playing marbles.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things you didn't tell your friend when you were playing marbles? For instance, one of the things you didn't tell her is how much you loved him.
Absolutely.
And how much fun it was. You do it in your own words. You're playing marbles,
Yes.
and now tell him.
You know, I think that I play well marbles, but you excel on that. I know that. I never said that before, but now I can tell you.
You beat him at his game. That's not
Yeah.
easy to do.
You are really excellent. You are really excellent, Zazinho, on that. Good. The fifth rule, the warming up process proceeds from the periphery to the center. The warming up process.
You know, when athletes begin to, before they actually do running or jumping, they stretch their muscles, they do exercises. But this is a warming up to what you really want to work on. Yeah. This is not, although it was important to you then, now it's not as significant as for instance, your work situation, or the fact that you're distant from your family.
Yeah.
So we begin with the wherever the protagonist is comfortable at the edge and slowly move towards the center.
Yeah. For instance, now we started as myself playing marbles, and this can be seen as a sort of warm-up.
Correct.
It's not a sort of, it is a warm-up.
It is.
So proceeding from the periphery to the center.
About the concern. What we're most involved in eventually is the central concern of the protagonist.
Yeah, fine.
For instance, in large mental hospitals with patients who were leaving, the central concern was, how will I feel outside this hospital? And you don't have much time for a warm-up. You have to go right in because the warm-up has already been established before they came. They're worried about going home. In fact, you had a long warm-up to coming here. You had to make preparations, you had to contact me, you had to make, first you had to make up your mind whether you were going, when it was possible to go, then you had to make all the other arrangements. That's also warming up. We don't realize that many times in life we are warming up to an essential scene or series of scenes called relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It happens in steps.
Fine. Yeah. Rule number 6. The protagonist will pick the time, the place, the scene, the auxiliary ego he or she requires in the production of his psychodrama.
Right. Now, what we didn't do here, first of all, we didn't have an auxiliary ego, but you imagine the auxiliary ego. We also, we knew you were playing outside. We knew it was daytime. We knew you were playing marbles.
Mm-hmm.
What we didn't do was do the setting, for instance. Are there houses here? Is this a garden? No, I asked you if it was a garden. You said it was a back garden.
It's a backyard.
We set the back.
We set the backyard when we did that.
To help you warm up.
Yeah. Now we are referring to something that we did in the other room.
Right.
Fine.
What I might have done is it springtime? Is it summer? Is it hot? Is it cool? Is there a special smell from the kitchen or from the trees or the flowers? In other words, you can refine the setting.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody talks about their homes, for instance, I go into where are you? What room of the house? How big is it? Do you like this one? What color are the walls? Where are the windows? Are there windows? What do you see when you look through the windows?
Mm-hmm.
What's on the floor? Are there books here? What else is in this room? In other words, it goes very specifically. But that's when people are doing their psychodrama. You can do it as specifically as you want to. It might be outdoors. They might just be hiking and stumbling over a rock or something and hurting themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. The 7th rule says psychodrama is just as much a method of restraint as it is a method of expression.
That's important because people think that, oh, it's all letting go and being wild. There's nothing like that. Very often patients need to learn inner restraint against aggressiveness, against withdrawing, and that also is explored. What are you feeling when you're withdrawn? What's going on? Like I did in the scene with you, with a person. What is that person feeling when they're withdrawn? You know they're withdrawn, but you're trying to reach them. So it's not you, perhaps not you are withdrawn, but the other person, and you have to deal with that. Or aggression, we have to often to build in stops, to put them into a situation where they want to be aggressive, and stop in the middle of walking up. So restraints. That's also true in education. For instance, turning a child into the teacher is actually a method of dramatic restraint, because the teacher doesn't behave the way the child does. So that the protagonist is learning different behavior that relates better to the group.
Now the 8th rule says that the patient, the subject, is permitted to be as unspontaneous or inexpressive as he or she is at this time.
Yeah.
So if I'm not spontaneous, let it be unspontaneous.
Right.
Are you spontaneous now, Zerka?
I'm trying. Spontaneous in the sense that this situation has never happened yet. So this is new. It's much easier to be spontaneous in a new situation than in an old one. That's the art of spontaneity, bringing novelty, freshness, and creativity into an old situation. That is what we are demanded to do during the day, because certain things are already, we know already what's going to happen, or we think we know. By that I mean, you don't force a patient to be more expressive. You gently guide them. If they're mute, you may ask, how's your body feel? What's in your, what's the weight in you? Where's the weight in your body? In other words, we do encourage them, but we recognize that they're sitting like this way. And I could say, well, that's an interesting hand you have. Can you open it? No. In other words, you gently nudge them into, but you begin with respecting where they are.
Well, the rule number 9, interpretation and insight giving in psychodrama is of a different nature from the verbal types of psychotherapy.
Correct. What we interpret is what the protagonist has been doing and what that doing means, not only to the protagonist, but the other people with whom they relate. Instead of saying, well, when you were 3 years old, your mother punished you, no, we don't do that. What does it mean? We stick to what we have seen the protagonist do. We can interpret later on and see what that action means. But what guides us is the action and the interaction. That's what we interpret if it has to be. For instance, if I see a 16-year-old hitting everybody, and then I would get to say, well, what is this hitting about? Or what do you expect to get from it? But to just interpret what the therapist thinks you're feeling or doing isn't enough. You have to start feeling and thinking what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the interpretation can come from that. And the therapist may be wrong and has to listen to the protagonist.
Rule number 10, even when interpretation is given, action is primary. There can be no interpretation without previous action.
That's what I just talked about.
Rule number 11.
You can say, for instance, since the last session, if I may refer to the last session, I noticed your back is straight, more straight. You look me in the face more easily.
Is it just an example, or you mean?
This is just an example I give of a protagonist.
You are not referring to me, Sergio.
I'm not referring to you. I'm referring to someone who's always sitting like this, looking out, and then the next time they're more available. And you say, it's wonderful the way you straightened out today. Do you know where your body was last week? It was like this. Do you remember that? No. You weren't aware of it. Maybe. Now look at the way you're facing me now. We're much more on equal terms.
Yeah. Well, rule 11, we have 15, so we are almost there.
Yep.
Warming up to psychodrama may proceed differently from culture to culture, and appropriate changes in the application of the method have to be made.
Yeah. For instance, if one goes to Africa, you might start with drumming or dancing.
Absolutely.
Or a community meeting. You have to adapt and you have to be respectful of the indigenous culture. Moreno always specified, train the indigenous leaders. Don't come like I bring the light of the world to you. That's not the way to work. Find the leaders in the community that can use these methods. Indigenous leaders. Strange leaders are not the best. That's also part of respecting the culture.
Yeah.
Because if you'd say, well, Moreno always did this, in a place where it doesn't fit, you're in trouble. You have to feel your way in. For instance, I found out that in certain cultures, we sometimes introduced a family photograph and enacted it. In certain cultures, they wouldn't produce a family photograph. It's too personal.
Yeah.
Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Take a school photograph.
Yeah. Rule number 12, psychodrama sessions consist of 3 portions: the warm-up, the action portion, and the post-action sharing by the group.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so this is
That's
basic.
clear, right?
Yeah, that's
That way the sharing is not analyzing. It is not, I saw you saying this and this. No. It's the director saying, in what way did what so-and-so did have an echo in your life
Mhm.
and in your heart? How did you identify? Where and when did you identify with this? Most of the time, I have rarely found someone who doesn't share with one or another thing. If they don't want to share, that's their business.
Mm-hmm.
But what it does is, the protagonist has been taken out of the group physically for a while, and now it's being and emotionally, now being reintegrated physically and emotionally back into the group.
Mm-hmm. So
that is really the verbal aspect of group psychotherapy.
Mm-hmm. And sharing is also a way of expressing solidarity to the protagonist, so she or he are not alone after being exposed, because there is some exposure.
The protagonist has made themselves naked, and the only way to pay, it's a form of love, and the only way to pay for that is with love.
Mm-hmm.
Love has to beget love.
Not intellectual analysis.
No, that's distant and cold.
Yeah. Rule number 13, the protagonist should never be left with the impression that he or she is all alone with this type of problem in the group.
Yeah.
This is what we
But I
mentioned.
just, yes,
Yeah.
but I want to highlight that. Moreno had a little boy brought to him who had just come from home to boarding school.
Mm-hmm. Connie is just now, she realized that we
Like the other
are
people.
registering. Well, I'm not sure that we are. Let me check here. I think that we are. Yeah. Well, no, that's fine. It's I think it's working.
And this little boy had stolen something from one of the other children. And Moreno began to share with him that he had stolen something when he was a little boy. And then he asked people in the group if they had ever stolen anything, any little thing. And I know I stole something, and I told him.
What have you done, Zerka,
Well,
when you
you'll
were...
read it in my book. What impressed me was that Moreno put himself first, as the first culprit.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't ask the group yet. He said, well, you know, in fact, if I remember, the little boy had stolen a pen and pencil set off Moreno's desk. And Moreno said, you can keep the pen and pencil. He didn't take it back.
Mm-hmm. Well, exposing himself is a way also of stimulating, warming up other people
Correct.
to do the same. Rule number 14. The protagonist must learn to take the role of all these with whom he is meaningfully related, to experience those persons in his social atom or her social atom, their relationship to him or to her, and to one another.
Yeah. To really integrate yourself as a social being, you should have some sense of who am I facing when my mother's angry? How does my father relate to that? That doesn't all get done at the same time. It may have to be done in steps.
And for instance, I should be able not only to play myself, playing marbles, but I should also be able to do, well, now I am Zezinho, and I am the teacher, the one who teaches Sergio how to play marbles. I'm quite clever also, you know?
Yeah. Sure you are. Do you love Sergio?
Yes, very much. We get very much together. We play marbles. We go to the streets. You know, I do some shoe shining,
Oh,
and
right.
Sergio is also trying to do some.
He's not good, is he? Not as
Well,
good
not
as
as good as I am, but he will improve.
He'll
I'm
learn.
sure.
Tell me, are you closer to him right now than any of his brothers?
I feel myself very close to him. I have to ask him about that,
Yes.
but I feel very close, very close. You know, he has just one little brother, Paulo, and we are very close, but Sergio is my very good friend.
Good. Thank you for coming today.
Well, so that was the rule number 14. The protagonist must learn to take the role of all of these.
What was it like for you now to take the friend's role?
It was, I felt very well, because it took me a long time before meeting my friend, my old friend again.
Oh, good.
So I'm feeling very, very, very happy about it.
Sure. Sure.
Well, the final 15th rule: the director must trust the psychodrama method as the final arbiter and guide in the therapeutic process. One could say in the pedagogical process also, not only therapeutic.
Right. You have to feel that this is the best method you can work with. If you don't believe in it, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very delicate and has enormous consequences. So either if you don't trust it and don't feel you're doing it to your own satisfaction or the satisfaction of your protagonist, it's contraindicated.
Mm-hmm.